My name is Sam. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at Fairygodboss. And Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency. And we offer a ton of great free resources like anonymous company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help you succeed throughout your career. We will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. You can leave them in the Q&A. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. And feel free to leave questions as yourself or anonymously. Like I said, we'll get to as many as possible at the end. The webinar is also going to be recorded and sent in a follow-up email by the end of the day today. So if you miss anything or you want to rewatch it back later, you will have the chance to do so. Here with me today are three extraordinary women from Johnson & Johnson. So I'd love to start off by having all of you introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your current role at Johnson & Johnson and what made you want to pursue a career there. Lela, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, I've been working mostly in the pharma industry, but also in the animal health industry in supply chain roles for the past 20 years. And currently in my current role, I'm Vice President for Value Chain Management for Janssen Supply Chain. And to explain that role a little bit, so together with my team, we are responsible for the full product portfolio, which means delivering the new product, optimizing the supply chain performance through the product life cycle, but also driving best-in-class end-to-end product management. And in addition to that, we also have a team supporting our business development and licensing team from a supply chain perspective. So why did I choose, first of all, J&J? Very obvious is the culture at J&J, the culture driven by our credo. That was one of the big reason why I joined J&J. And why I am in this role. So in previous role, I worked in most areas of supply chain and wanted to get a bit more of that end-to-end perspective, that end-to-end picture between R&D, supply chain, and commercial. And that is actually exactly what I have in my current role.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Cyrille, I'll come to you next.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Cyrille. I'm Lebanese, and I'm an electrical and mechanical engineer. I have around 13 years of experience in engineering and supply chain. My current role is I'm part of the strategic capacity management team, and our team is responsible to ensure that we have enough production resources to meet the long-term needs of the company. And that's obviously to make sure that we ensure patient supply on time and in full. Why J&J? I think, Lela mentioned the culture of the company, which really embraced diversity and inclusion. And something that for me, that I appreciate a lot is the fact that it's not only something that you hear about J&J, but it's something that I have experienced. First, I come from the consumer industry, from a different function, and I was recruited into procurement. So the company took a risk to recruit me into a new role in consumer, and then another risk again with accepting me into the pharma industry when I didn't have any prior experience in pharma. So I think when they talk about diversity of experience, diversity of background, diversity of nationalities, of everything, I think they really mean it, and I really appreciate that.
Amazing. And Mandy, we'll finish with you.
Thanks. I am currently in a rotational program called the Global Operational Leadership Development Program. So it's a 2.5-year program where I rotate into 3 different positions. Currently, I'm in my 2nd position working in medical device product management, doing a lot of cost saving for life cycle products by changing materials, changing suppliers, changing designs, a combination of those things. And I was really interested in this program specifically because of the rotations and the opportunity to step into roles where I might not really have the background for. This project management one's a really great example. I'm an engineer by training, so it's been a little bit different for me. And my interest in Johnson & Johnson really echoes a lot of what has already been said. I did a co-op when I was doing my master's program and really got to see the value that the company put into all of the employees, even when I was a co-op, you know, the importance they put in developing me really was something that stuck with me and made me want to stay with the company. So it was an easy choice to accept the rotational position.
I mean, it sounds like from all of you and from previous webinars we've done with employees at Johnson & Johnson that the culture there is just incredible, really fosters a nice diversity in the industry. But today we're here to talk about all the obstacles that women in STEM careers face, because let's face it, not every company can foster such a great culture like Johnson & Johnson. So I'd love to hear from each of you. What has been the biggest obstacle in your career so far? And how did you overcome that? Cyrille, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, sure. So for me, one of the biggest obstacles that I faced in my career was when I was working as an electrical and mechanical engineer in construction sites. And I was mainly, as you probably know, this is a very much a male-dominated field. And I was dealing with people who really did not, I think they did not really think that I had enough knowledge in the technical field or in the electrical field, because in their mindset, like a woman never really practically does any electrical installation in her house. So how come, I might have all the theoretical knowledge, but I definitely don't know enough on the practical side. And I was in a construction field, so I had to have some sort of a practical knowledge. So the biggest obstacle that I faced is I constantly felt in the start that I was being ignored, that people did not want to hear me. And if they wanted to hear me, it's just to prove me wrong, that I was saying something wrong or stupid, and that they know better, that they need to teach me. And that was in the start, and I really had let's say, a big problem with that. I think, you know, when I think about it, and what I did at the time is, the first thing is, you know, they always say that knowledge and preparation is key to overcome these things. And that I totally agree, because it gives you some confidence to make yourself heard. If they ignored you the first time and you're sure about what you're saying, you're going to speak up, you're going to say something again. So this was one of the, let's say, the main thing. But the other thing that I feel is very important is, I think in general, maybe women, or at least myself, we kind of have a problem, or in the beginning of our careers, I had a problem to say or to ask a question, because I felt that people wanted me to know or expected me to know. And if I didn't know, I was like, I didn't know enough, or I didn't earn my place in that position. I think one of the things that now I do better, much better, is I am not afraid to ask a question. And I think there is a way to ask a question. And what I discovered, that most of the time you ask a question when you have prepared enough and you don't know, and you ask a question, everyone in the room, or most of the people in the room, don't know the answer. And then you start discussing with the people, and this is what you bring in terms of value adding. So I think it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to have your own style. It's okay not to know everything. But I think what you need to be is, let's say, a figure it out person. You need to understand how to tackle your problems, how to solve them, and how to engage with your team. And those things helped me to, let's say, to overcome this challenge that I faced in the start.
I think that's a great point, that when you are well prepared and you still have a question about something, it's very likely that somebody else is also having that same question. So you shouldn't be afraid to ask them. It's only going to make you stronger at what you're doing and a better employee. I love that advice. And Mandy, I'll come to you next to tell us about your biggest obstacle and how you overcame it.
Sure. You know, I have been very fortunate that my short career so far has been all within J&J, which we talked about earlier, has a great culture. So honestly, I think the biggest obstacle I've been facing is myself, and a lot of imposter syndrome. You know, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman in a STEM field, or if it's just a personal, you know, battle that I'm experiencing. But I feel a lot that I need to know everything, and if I don't yet, then somehow I'm failing, or somehow I've not, you know, gotten up to speed quickly enough. So I find myself sometimes hesitant to speak up in a meeting or to voice an opinion, because I'm concerned that it could be wrong and I could be perceived as, you know, not being good enough at my job, or you know, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I'm still, I wouldn't necessarily say I've completely overcome it yet, but it took me a while to even realize I was doing that or I was thinking that way. I have a really great mentor, and we were talking about something a few months ago, and, you know, I don't even remember what I said to her. And she said, well, why didn't you say something? Or why didn't you, you know, voice that? And she kind of helped me realize, you know, what is happening and why, you know. So I think it's been a bit of fake it till you make it. It's been helping me a little bit. But also kind of just recognizing when I'm having those moments and trying to change my mentality around it, trying to change the way that I show up in meetings. If I feel that I need to be extra prepared, you know, then making sure I have that. You know, if there's a certain point I want to make sure I actually write that down so that I can feel a little more confident about making it. So it's an ongoing overcoming, I suppose, but I definitely think I am on my way, and it's been a growth experience for sure over the past, I would say, 6 months to a year.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone with imposter syndrome. It's something that we see constantly in the Fairygodboss community. I would venture a guess that every single person attending this webinar has felt that at some point in their career or might be feeling it now. But I think you have the right mindset of just realizing that you're feeling this way and trying to overcome it is a great first step. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important to touch on. And then Lela, I'll finish off with you here. Just tell us about your biggest obstacle and how you overcame that.
So I could also name many different situations where I felt uncomfortable. For example, I remember 15 years ago when I interviewed for a production chemist role. One of the interview panelists shared openly with me that he did not recommend hiring me because when he saw my high heels, I was wearing high heels for the interview, he thought that would not be fit for production at all. And I can list many other situations like that. But over the years, and truly the mindset that I apply in my life when I feel uncomfortable or when I face obstacle, I just say to myself, you're not a victim. You always have a choice. And the only thing you can't fully change is health. So with that, actually, I realized that my biggest obstacle was my own self-confidence. And sometimes worrying too much about what others say and what others might think. I think it's similar to the stories we've just heard. So building self-confidence truly came over the years. And the more I did stretch myself out of my comfort zone, the more I did build that self-confidence. You know, also having had the privilege to have amazing mentors in my career and incredibly supporting family, you know, I had that safe environment where I could openly share what I was going through. So truly what changed over the years is that at the beginning, when I was given a big challenge, I did always see the potential obstacles first. And, you know, the first question in my head was, will I be able to do it? Will I be successful in that role? And probably most of the time, the answer was, oh, no, you're not ready because you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have that. And that's actually probably a question many women have first when presented with a challenge. And today, with the self-confidence that I continue to build, when offered a new opportunity or challenge, my first reaction is I ask myself two questions. And the first question is, well, do I have the passion for that role? Am I motivated by that role? And that's typically something you can't describe. It's something you feel when someone describes the role. And the second question is the culture of the company or the team the right culture? Means, is that culture in alignment with my core values? That's why we spoke, you know, highly about J&J and that culture that I personally consider to be a key pillar for success. And if I have those two ingredients, like the passion for the job and the right culture, the right environment, I think I will do a good job and success will follow. I have the two key ingredients, and those two ingredients will make me successful. That's what I believe in.
I love that. Two questions of, do I feel passionate about this and does it feel right? It's a great way to kind of self-reflect and check in and make sure that you're doing what's right for yourself as well. Kind of not self-doubting, but making sure that it's the right fit before you move forward. That's awesome. Now, a few of you touched on this, but I really want to speak about this because I think it relates to this whole, just overcoming obstacles. A big one is, those moments where you're the only woman in the room. And so I'd love to hear, Cyrille, you touched on this already, but I'd love to hear more about that. What do you do when you're feeling like you're the only woman in the room? How do you either get more women in or just make sure you're being heard?
Yeah, I mean, in different times in my career, I have been the only woman in the room. Sometimes it was more difficult, as I mentioned before, because I was in a place where it was quite a field where only males have the passion, as Lela said, for some types of jobs, and many very less females would be there, especially in my country. And other places where it was just not a diverse team, but maybe in a different setting. And I think it depends on the setting. Your reaction maybe could be or would be different. In the beginning, I felt that I was a bit intimidated to be the only woman in the team because I didn't feel that there was another person who would be an advocate for me or who would understand me. And I felt a bit intimidated because my style was a bit different, because maybe other people were more aggressive or had a different style. And then with the experience and maybe with different roles or types of roles, I started to feel that actually I could take this to my advantage. I could feel that, okay, why not? If I'm there and if I say something and if it's smart, hopefully, I will be remembered for what I said because I was the only woman in the room. And all this pressure about, yourself not being good enough, what Mandy mentioned before, or the fact that you represent all the women in that role. And I think it only adds pressure and doesn't help you. I think you are your own self in these meetings. Again, I would say if you prepare enough, if you're there because someone trusted in your capabilities, because you know enough to be there. And what I think is something that I found personally that was a bit, let's say, bothering me was sometimes some interruptions from my male colleagues. And you can always deal with that by speaking up. For example, I say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish this point. I think I have a point that you want to hear. I have my own style. I will not change it. I will not become more aggressive. I might become more assertive, but not more aggressive. And I think people need to speak up. I think everyone deserves to be heard. And this is how I deal with it. And as Lela mentioned, I think we are also our own enemies. So if we are able to convince ourselves that we are there because we have something to add and because we know what we're doing, I think then there is no problem to say what's on your mind. And I'm definitely sure that the people around you will see the value that you're adding.
Yeah, I've never heard what you said before too about using the fact that you're the only woman in the room to your advantage. Most people talk about it, as a disadvantage, of course, but you're using it to make sure that you're being heard. You're saying, well, I am the only woman, so you will hear me and you will remember what I say. I love that. And Mandy, same question to you. Have you ever had those moments where you're the only woman in the room, and what did you do about it, or what would you recommend others do about it?
Sure. I've had a couple in college for sure. I was a chemical engineer, and then my master's, I was in industrial engineering, both very male-dominated classes. Also, a lot of male professors, not a ton of female representation in my professors. And then most recently, in my first rotation, I was in a manufacturing facility, which there are for sure women, but predominantly, again, a kind of male-oriented space. And, I was fortunate that the director of my team and also the general manager of the site were both women, so I did get to see those women in leadership positions. But the people I was working with day to day, there was a single woman I can think of that I would work with day to day, and there were a ton of meetings I was in that was just men. So now I've kind of got this coupled situation of being the only woman in the room, and also being super new in my career and feeling like I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And at first it was really intimidating, but I think I kind of got through it by really asking questions when I needed to, doing my due diligence to make sure, you know, I read the SOPs or I read the change control, whatever the document I knew we were going to be reviewing that day, make sure that I knew it front and back. Asking for help, you know, like that one female colleague that I had, asking her, hey, what's the deal with this guy and, you know, that guy, and talking to my boss, letting her know. And building relationships with people is super helpful as well, you know, because if you're in a meeting, and regardless if it's a meeting full of men or a meeting, you know, a co-ed, whatever it is, if people can see you as a person rather than just, you know, another seat being filled, that really helps and can make you more comfortable speaking up, asking a question, making a point, whatever it is. So, you know, I think after 9 months there, I wasn't fully comfortable, and I always noticed, you know, there was never a time that I walked into a room and didn't think, oh, I'm the only woman again. Like, but you know, it's manageable, and it's something that kind of every day gets a little bit easier, and you start to know people and build those relationships and build that trust, and you know, it gets a little easier every day.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that because you're so new to your field, that also adds on like that added challenge.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting to hear about your experience because it's very different from, you know, Lela and Cyrille's as well. And that brings me into an interesting question. What do you think is the biggest challenge for women pursuing STEM careers, and how can they overcome those challenges? A lot of women we're finding are turning to STEM actually later in their careers. They're making that transition, but something is holding them back. So Lela, I'd love to hear from you first. What do you think is the biggest challenge for women right now?
Women. Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, the way I look at it, no matter what career we pursue and what support we have at home, many women tend to take on responsibilities way beyond their career, caring about the kids, the family, the aging parents, and truly trying to balance all that is not easy. But you know, remember that this natural empathy that women have makes women also exceptional leaders. And I'm sure many have seen the article comparing how women leaders led their countries through the COVID crisis and how well their countries are doing with facts and data compared to other big countries led sometimes by, you know, big ego people. So back to the biggest challenges women pursuing STEM careers face. There is no one model fits all to overcome all these challenges because, you know, it is overwhelming to wear all these hats. I personally found that having more role models and women in STEM jobs that have themselves been through similar challenges to be very helpful. I even remember actually first time I attended a women development program, and having worked for years in a male-dominated environment, I truly felt the difference, and the connectivity was so much easier because you know, we just understood each other without even saying too much. And that made me realize, oh, this is probably how it feels when men are working together in that male-dominated environment. So I always encourage women to network, which I think it's something we still don't do enough. Remember, we're wearing all these hats and trying to balance all these responsibilities, but it's so important. And I found it helpful to talk to other women in similar position that are facing or that have faced similar challenges in their career.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Networking right now is so important, and it can be hard because we are mostly working in a very digital, virtual environment. But you know, reach out to people you know on LinkedIn, ask for coffee chats, go on Facebook or Fairygodboss. Sorry, losing my words there. But you know, go to these different networks. You can find people everywhere, and just ask for 10 minutes to start expanding your network. Mandy, same question to you though. What do you think is the biggest challenge for women pursuing STEM careers right now? And what do you think they can do to overcome those challenges?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think something that's been getting better, I've seen it getting better, but still needs, work, is women being able to see themselves in the roles that they want, that they dream of having. There's, not a lot of representation in the STEM industry if you're looking for somebody to emulate or somebody to be your role model. Having access to mentors who look like you is huge. I've been so fortunate that I've had some really amazing women mentors who have been, supportive of me and able to talk me through things. And it's huge having that, and if I didn't, I don't know sometimes where I would be or what I would do. So I think a good first step, is events like this, places like Fairygodboss, any kind of place where you can get that connection with other women and see that, women in STEM, we exist, we're doing it, we're awesome. And, being able to talk to them and hear about their experiences is, huge, because I think there can be this perception about it being really difficult to be a woman in STEM, and sometimes it is, for sure. But also sometimes it's the same as just being a person in STEM. And so being able to talk to somebody and hear about their experience and realize that it's not that scary and it's very doable, can make a huge impact.
Basically what Mandy's saying is everybody should be watching this webinar and hearing from these three women, because they love working in STEM, and you can see that it's maybe not as hard. You're putting up the barriers for yourself. Awesome. So my next question is going to be for Lela and Cyrille, as you both kind of moved up, and you're quite seasoned in your industries, and you're, holding really great titles. So how have you both built trust with colleagues and managers and moved up, the figurative corporate ladder? Cyrille, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, so for me, I think one of the most important thing when I start a new role, the first thing is I map my stakeholders, and I schedule one-to-one with them. I send emails. I try to schedule 30 minutes of catch-up and try to understand what they expect from me. What do they like to see more from the team and from myself? What they would want to see different? What they want maybe in addition to what I understood from the role, etc. So as a first step, I'd like to understand a bit what are the expectations. And this is not only from my colleagues and my peers, but also from the different functions I deal with. That's the first one. The second one is, I think that one of the things that work as well for me is that I try all the time in the start of any role to take some tasks that no one wants to do. So the first thing is I learn more about things that maybe some other people think it's like something they know and maybe it's boring. So I learn more about the team and the role. And the other thing is it's just that it gives you the visibility that you need, because you're doing something that no one else wants to do. So you're picking up some work from the other people, other colleagues. That's in the beginning. Then when I'm more in the role, I think one of the most important things is not to commit on something that you cannot achieve, because once you lose that, you lose the trust of your colleagues and of your team. And the other thing I think is and again, it's really prepping, doing your homework, talking to people, understanding your role, and not just throwing things when you don't know what you're talking about. So
That's
those
great
are
advice.
the main things.
Yeah, I love that point about doing the job that no one else wants to do. It also makes you invaluable to your team. You are the person who knows how to do whatever that thing is that nobody else wants to or can do. But also a great point to not be over-promising on things that you might not know how to do, because then you will lose that trust, and that trust is so important. So Lela, same question to you. How are you building that trust with colleagues and managers?
Yeah. So first of all, starting in a new role, very similar actually to what Cyrille has shared, connecting with as many people as I can in the organization, and really across all levels. That's very important, because with that, you also show to people every person matters. I'm not just connecting with upper management to get the visibility. I'm connecting with everyone in the organization to truly understand where the organization is and where we can bring improvement. But then I'd like to believe that then over time, I build trust by being myself. So the feedback I have received over the years from my team and the people I worked with is that I am authentic and approachable. And actually, I like that brand, and I wanted to keep that brand no matter what position I was in. And what I did adjust, back to your question, moving up the ladder, I would say is that I became a bit less naive, if I can put it this way. You know, I had a coach early in my career who gave me a great advice, because at that time I felt that being authentic is being yourself and always sharing what you think. And that coach told me, you know what, okay, be authentic, but don't be stupid. This is what he said. And actually, that did resonate very well. So over the years, I like to believe that I remained authentic, but I learned that being authentic is not about sharing everything that goes in your head at every moment, because what matters is it's not just raising your voice, but more importantly, the outcome of what you're trying to achieve. So in my job, when I interact with people, I always think patient first, or in other industry, you would say you think customer first, and what we can do together to serve them better. Because at the end, this is a common goal we have, and this is what matters the most. And by thinking this way, I can remain focused on my target while of course being authentic and building trust.
Be authentic, but don't be stupid. I think that's advice we could all do to remember sometimes. That's awesome. I'm going to write that above my wall here so that I can remember.
And
so my next
Samantha,
question.
Sorry,
Yes,
Samantha, just to add on something, because Lela mentioned a very, I have to say that it's also a true point that she's very approachable, and it's something I personally experienced. But I think that a lot of women, and I was one of them, before, let's say, a few years back, I used to be a bit, I wouldn't say anxious, but a bit like embarrassed to just reach out to someone I didn't know when I started a job, especially if it's someone above me in terms of position. And this is something very important, because now I started doing it, and really the worst thing that happened is that you don't receive an answer from this person. They don't answer your email, or they just don't connect with you, and it's okay. You have a lot of other people who will. And I think this is also, it helps you with your confidence, and also it helps you with getting to know your surrounding. So don't be discouraged. First of all, don't be embarrassed to reach out to someone. The maximum is they don't reply to you, which is fine. And the other thing is, don't be discouraged if they don't. There are plenty of others who will. So just to say this on the networking.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's especially important for people who are still trying to move up the ladder in their corporate environment. You know, it's this idea of reaching out and making those connections everywhere. Like Lela said, everyone is important, not just the people at your level, not just the people above you, everyone. So just making every single connection where you can. And as Cyrille said, what's the worst that could happen? They say no, they don't answer. That's not that bad. So the next question is, are you involved in any programs, organizations, both within Johnson & Johnson and outside the company? And if you are, how have those helped you in your career? And I did my research, so Cyrille, I'm going to come to you with this question.
Yeah, I'm actually, well, as you might know, I'm in the YSTEM2D. I'm in the professional pillar in Johnson & Johnson. So I'm part of the EMEA board. But also outside of Johnson & Johnson, I'm part of the INSEAD Alumni Association, both in Zurich and in Lebanon. Obviously, we work a lot with women in business or with environmental impact opportunities. And these groups are important. I think if I have an advice to people on this call and in general is, it's very important to be part of a community or a group of people who share the same values or the same thoughts that you have. First of all, it builds your network. So I'm part of these, well, in these two groups, I have been part of the mentoring programs. Both Mandy and Lela shared that they have the importance of mentoring. And for me, this is really important to look up for role models. And it's not just women, it's also men who are advocating for diversity and inclusion. So it's important to have a good coach or a good mentor who can guide you. In these groups, you can find people not necessarily in your company, but also outside of your company to mentor you, to help you, to guide you. The other thing is that you meet people, you have fun, and you also work on things that are close to your heart. So in my case, for example, I like to work on environmental topics. I like to work on social gatherings. So these things, at least when I'm part of a community, these things help me to do those kind of events and to let's say put them together. And finally, obviously, since we're talking about J&J and INSEAD, I think it also helps you to be part of workshops, of webinars, and to develop your skills in a certain or specific topic that you want to develop.
Yes, and the reason, Cyrille, I came to you with this question is partially so I could plug Johnson & Johnson's Women in STEM 2D group on Fairygodboss. We'll be sending out a link to join that group in the follow-up email later today. I encourage everyone on the call to join. You can ask posts, as yourself or anonymously, connect with the incredible women at Johnson & Johnson and just other women in the STEM 2D field. It's a really great group. There's lots of resources shared in there. So I definitely recommend everyone join it. Alrighty, and now let's round out here. Finally, what advice do you have for someone who may be looking to pursue a STEM career or take the next step, but they're afraid? Lela, I'll come to you first.
Yeah. So first of all, my first reaction is life is too short to be afraid. And what I found helpful is, you know, to project yourself 50 years from now, or even a bit more, depending where you are in your career, and really think of what would make you most proud if you look back at your life and your career. And that might actually help you understand what is holding you back, or potentially creating that fear that is blocking you. So my advice, actually, I prefer to call it my recipe because there is no one model fits all. And my recipe is be yourself and believe in yourself, live your passion every day, and focus on what gives you energy and happiness, because this is what you are good at.
It's that passion and fit combination coming back again. That's perfect. Mandy, how about you? What's your advice?
Yeah, so growing up, my mom, and to this day, she still says it, I think maybe even my abuela might have said it, I'm not sure, but she always would say, nothing in life worth doing is easy. I recently found out that's a Theodore Roosevelt quote, and she's been plagiarizing him her whole life, but it's true. It's you know, majoring in engineering wasn't easy. Being a woman in a field that largely is filled with men is not always easy, but if it's what you want to do, if it's what, you know, you have the passion for, if it's the thing that is going to get you out of bed in the morning and be happy about going to work, then it's worth all of the toil and diligence that it takes to get there. So, you know, if you're thinking about it, I say take the leap. Make sure you've got that support system around you in case you stumble, but it's you know, and I guess I'll give a quick plug here. We have a great program at J&J called Reignite. It's to get women back into STEM roles that maybe took a break, or maybe have never had a STEM background but are interested in it. So if anybody on this call, if that's something that they've been thinking about doing, I would definitely suggest checking out the J&J Reignite program. It's awesome.
Well, your mom and Theodore Roosevelt were definitely right. But I love that you mentioned the Reignite program. Actually, in our previous webinar with Johnson & Johnson back in April, we did discuss about the Reignite program a little bit more in detail. So if you're on this call right now and curious about it, go check out that event. We went into a lot more detail about it, but it's called Re-Ignite. Definitely look it up if you're interested. It's a great program. So Cyrille, I'll come to you last. What's your advice for someone who might be afraid to go into a STEM field?
So for me, probably two things. The first one is all of us need to believe that diversity is important. It's not just a word that we say or something that it is important because the experience that we saw in the last couple of years and a lot of products that have been made or designed only by men, I can give a couple of examples, failed because they didn't have any women in their team to show a different perspective or to show something different. So first of all, believe that really if you're going into STEM, it's not just because we want diversity, just because we want to increase the statistics, but it's necessary for us as people because we will have better products and we will have better lifestyle. So that's one. So believe in what you're doing and that what you're doing has an impact. That's one. And the second thing is something I heard when I was a kid by an engineer, a woman engineer. She told me, you know, whatever you choose to do in your life, be passionate about it. I think Lela also mentioned, and excel in it. If you don't like it, don't do it. So whatever are the stereotypes that you have in your head, whatever you imagine, whatever people make you imagine, if you like what you're doing, nothing will stop you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. We had a ton of audience questions already come in, so I'm going to turn to those in just a moment. As a reminder, you can leave questions in the Q&A as yourself or anonymously. We'll be sending out a recording of this later today. And somebody asked if I'll be providing contact info. I will include all of our panelists' LinkedIn pages in the follow-up email. So yes, you will be able to contact them later. Alrighty, let's start off with this question from an anonymous attendee. Really interesting. I've been told that I need to manage up. What does that even mean and how do you do it? Lela, I'll start with you here.
Yeah, you know, this a lot of people, the word manage up might feel sometimes be perceived as negative. The way I always look at it is it's about managing stakeholder by understanding their perspective and their needs. So if you move away and, you know, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm not good at those politics. They would consider it as politics. I'm not good at, no, it's about reaching out and again, to people across the organization to understand their perspective, to understand where they are coming from. And through that, you get a better feeling of the company culture, of the challenge. So it's a way of educating yourself versus this being perceived as something, you know, that is a negative thing that I have to do, and kind of just reinforcing Cyrille's point as you do that, managing up, which I'd rather call it managing stakeholders and understanding, getting the view of the different stakeholders. Do not hesitate, also don't be intimidated by people's level. Because the worst thing, and I think you framed it so nicely, Cyrille, the worst thing that can happen to you, they just say no, but you would have 5 others that would have said yes. So look at it in a positive way and what's in it for you in terms of learning more of what people are thinking, where they are in their thought process, if you implement change, where they are in their maturity curve. This is all very, very important as you're trying, you know, to bring your value. And don't look at it as something negative. Oh, I need to manage politics. Is again thinking of patients we serve and how together as a group of people we can serve patients or customers better.
Perfect. That's a great way to put it. Cyrille, I'm going to direct this next question to you. We have an anonymous attendee who said that they're very much in a blame culture sort of a work environment where it's constantly just finding someone else to blame for things. And they're afraid that they're not feeling heard at all. So what's your advice for them when they're working in companies where they're not feeling heard?
You know, I have a politically correct answer and a blunt answer. So I'll start with the politically correct answer. I would say speak up, talk to your manager, tell him or her what you feel, and be sure that they understand what's happening. But then at some point, my blunt answer would be, if you are in a culture where you cannot voice your concerns, where you cannot talk to your managers about what's going on, when people don't want to hear you, and when you have like things that are going your way that you think are unfair, honestly, I don't want to be part of such a culture. I don't want to be, I think something that also was mentioned before is it's not only the job or you being a fit for a certain job or a certain company, but it's also the company and the job being a fit for you. So if you really tried your best, spoke about things, and people don't want to hear you, I think you deserve better. And this would be my blunt answer.
Perfect. Mandy, you mentioned before about having a lot of mentors and a really strong support system. So I'm going to come to you for this next question. An attendee asked, we hear a lot about women helping women, but have you ever had an experience with male leaders that have made a significant difference and helped you overcome obstacles in your journey as a woman in STEM?
Of course. I think a lot of times these conversations, it's very easy to funnel into, you know, women empowering women and women helping women. But yes, there are a lot of really amazing men out there who advocate for us just as much as we advocate for each other. And I definitely have been fortunate to know many of them. I can think of a couple. I'll talk about when I was in my master's program. There was a class that all the masters had to take that was kind of like resume building, interview tips, stuff like that. It was like a 1-credit class. And the professor was a male, and he was an amazing advocate for everybody in the class, but particularly women and people from diverse backgrounds, to kind of help coach us in how to turn that into our strength and not make it be something that, oh, you know, maybe you're the only woman that interviewed for the job, or maybe you're the only Hispanic person that interviewed for the job, but, you know, turn that on its head. And why do those experiences and why does your diversity make you the greatest candidate for this job and make you so powerful and so strong? And so, you know, I don't think that it's a new concept, you know, taking the things that are different about you and making them your selling point. But it was the first time I had heard it, and it was something that he kind of hammered into us all semester and was really was a big advocate for. So he was instrumental in kind of helping me redefine how I think about myself and how I present myself professionally.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I'd recommend to everybody, find those male allies. There's tons of them out there. You just have to ask around, but look to women's ERGs. See if you can get, you know, the men in your company involved in those as well. But that's great. Thank you so much, Mandy. This next question is from Anne, and I'm going to leave it up to whoever wants to grab it here. What advice would you give to young mothers who might have to step away from their careers and their STEM careers? And how can they stay involved in STEM field while they might be raising their child for a little while? Whoever wants to take it, feel free to jump in.
So the way I look at it, especially not to lose back to the self-confidence topic, not to lose your self-confidence and feel maybe that 5 years later you're completely disconnected and your value is limited. I think there's different way of staying connected. So first of all, there are many on connecting with your colleagues, understanding what's happening in that field. Also, there are smaller jobs. It doesn't need to be 100% jobs. So, for example, there are different innovation councils in different countries about science projects. So there are different ways of keeping your brain fit in that field, and not. It's more kind of to maintain that self-confidence that 6 years later, even later, that you don't lose that. So I would encourage them to stay engaged with different forums where they get access to the new technology. I'm just talking a lot about my, the own industry I'm in the pharma industry. And many of those, there are many areas where they look for volunteers, small startup companies that are also looking for type of support that would highly value someone willing to help them, staying connected with friends at work and colleagues, and just listening what's happening, what's moving in the industry. I think, so the advice is stay connected, and there are many different channels. And if they don't know how, reach out, like back to the network, reach out to the people and ask, hey, how can I stay connected with what's happening in pharma, in consumer, and then get people's idea. You're not alone. Just don't isolate yourself and don't become a victim. That's kind of back also to the first thing I mentioned. Don't become a victim. I think
Yeah, I think don't isolate yourself. That's perfect. You know,
That's
keep
the
your
thing.
network open. I love
Yeah,
that. And keep learning. Why
yeah,
stop learning? Just keep learning.
exactly.
Which
Exactly.
leads perfectly into my next question from an anonymous attendee. What resources do you recommend for women to learn more about this STEM field? And I think, how can they figure out what they're interested in if they've never done STEM before? Cyrille, I'll start with you, but anybody else, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of resources available to people to learn about the topic. But what I would recommend myself is to reach out to people who are in STEM positions, because I think when you hear it from someone who's been in that field is different than when you just read about it. I think it's important that you reach out to people. You can use LinkedIn or Fairygodboss or any other platform that you like, and talk to people about their experience, their challenges. I'm sure that if every one of us look around, there are plenty of amazing women and men, I would say. Men, because I know that a lot of them are advocating for diversity as well, and they have other friends or family members who are in this STEM position who can talk to us a lot about STEM field. That's one, so the networking. And then also go and do a non-field experience. Sometimes in some places it's more available than others, but I'm sure if you talk to people, you know where it's available. I think one of the biggest problems that we see with the youngest generation, and I was one of them, is that we didn't have really a non-field like kind of experience. So it's good that you go and see what's happening in a factory, what's happening in a pharma, let's say, environment. And I think that could really help for people to understand what is STEM really and what it is about.
Awesome. And this next question that just came in, I actually want to come to each of you because I find that every single person has a different answer here, and they're all right. Nothing's right. It's totally subjective. How have you found balance in your family life, your personal life, and your career aspirations? Where do you draw the line and how do you balance the two? Mandy, I'll start with you here.
Sure. This is a great question, and I tend to not be great at finding balance. And I think a lot of women who are high achieving and who are, in the STEM fields and trying to climb the corporate ladder and all that, I think a lot of people, not just women, people struggle with this. But and especially now that, I am basically 2 feet away from my desk at all times, I just think, oh, maybe I'll, check my email real quick. But I think it's important to have some boundaries for yourself. So whatever that needs to be for you to have the time to recharge and relax and just kind of turn your brain off for a little bit. So if that means, that on the weekends you absolutely do not enter your office, or, at 5 o'clock on the dot, you're always shutting, whatever it needs to be to make sure, and then having a couple of go-to relaxing activities. I love to knit, so I know, like, oh man, if I really just need to take a break for 15 minutes, like, I will pick up whatever project I'm working on and knit. I have a dog, I love to play with him, I'll take him outside and play fetch for a little bit with him. So having a couple of go-to quick breaks throughout the day can also be really good to kind of help balance just throughout the working day.
I think that was a great point that you made in the beginning. You're still trying to find the balance. I mean, the balance shifts all the time. I always like to say there are some days when you have to spend more time with work and some days where you really have to step away, which, as Mandy said, can be super hard when your desk is right next to your couch. I'm sure you can see mine right there. It's so tempting to just lay down. And then it's also tempting in the middle of the night to come over and check my email, but it's kind of drawing that hard line when you can. So Cyrille, how are you finding that balance?
No, I think, as you mentioned, there are some days which are probably more busy than others, and that's okay. What's important is to be rigorous when you have some days where you don't really need to put extra hours. And so, as Mandy mentioned, you need to do what you like. So if you like to do an activity, that's good. If you like to sit with your family, to spend time with your friends, I don't know, but you need to make sure to allocate some time for yourself and be rigorous about it. I mean, for me, and again, we cannot say that all of our lives or professional lives will be it's an 8 to 5 job and that's it. I think we need to be flexible sometimes, but I think whenever you can, and especially you need to know that you need some time off, you need to take it and you need to be rigorous about it.
And then Lela, I'll finish with you. What's been working for you to find balance?
Yeah, well, I like to call it work-life integration versus balance, because every time you look at balance, you're imbalanced on one side. So I like to call it work-life integration, and I felt that I love what I do, kind of back to the passion piece. So this is why I feel it's an integration. So my job gives me a lot of positive energy that I can bring back to my family, and vice versa. Now, the balance piece, and kind of back to what Mandy and Cyrille mentioned, how do you make sure that you have the true quality time with the family, and that you're not still working in your brain while you think you're sitting with your family and friends, you're working. I mean, my biggest chance is my 9-year-old son, and trust me, so I work early morning. I'm an early morning person. And then he expects me when I'm at home evenings, that is his time. This is our family time. So if I'm not there, he would notice it straight away. And he would tell me, you are not listening. and that's some fabulous feedback. And actually, I apologize. And then I kind of realized that I switched my brain, like, oh my God, it's so right. Now I just really need to be here. That's family time, and focus more on the family. But it's an integration, but consciously switching on and off, I found that to be very, very important.
That's such a funny way of describing it, integration rather than balance, which is so true, because like I said, the balance constantly shifts. And so to your point, if it's shifting, it's not really balanced. I like that way of putting it. Well, we only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to do the last question, which I absolutely love, that came in from an anonymous attendee. What's your favorite part about working with Johnson & Johnson? And I think I know the answer, but Mandy, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, it's the culture. It's, the fact that the credo is not just something we slap up on the wall and forget about. And, sometimes I talk to people and they don't believe me. They think that I've drunk the Kool-Aid. Maybe I have, but then give me more Kool-Aid. It's a great culture. It's a great place to work.
Cyrille, how about you?
I think it's the same. I would also add the fact that we are here today, right? We are talking about this. This is an opportunity that we, or at least I, strongly appreciate. And the fact that we learn from people like Mandy, from people like Lela, and even we do this on our daily job in J&J. And it's just something that we have there, and it's all about the culture, which I love. So yeah.
Lela, I'll finish off with you, although I'm gonna guess it's the culture.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just building on completely echo Cyrille and Mandy's comment, but what makes me most proud, if I would have summarized it in one sentence, is diversity and inclusion is truly part of our DNA at Johnson & Johnson.
I love that. Well, thank you all so much for an incredible conversation. Thank you to everybody who attended today. As a reminder, I will send out the recording as well as all of their LinkedIn contact details in a follow-up email coming out later today. But you heard it here, Johnson & Johnson has an incredible culture, and you can learn more about them on Fairygodboss. Thanks so much to everyone for attending, and hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.